Good morning. Deputy Chief of the Indian Army Lieutenant General Rahul Singh was speaking at the FICCI seminar recently. There he made some observations and spoke of the lessons that the Indian military has learned from Operation Sindoor. It's important that these lessons be correct, otherwise the war appreciation of the Indian military can go dangerously wrong. So what I have done is picked up a few of the observations and lessons learned mentioned by Rahul Singh for discussion in the video. In no particular order, let me start with his observation that Sindoor was about one border, two adversaries, and then he added the third adversary also. So you see, when a senior military commander talks of one border, two adversaries, or one border, three adversaries, it sounds more like there was a combined operation, and combined operation is what NATO does. So it sounded more like a combined operation against India in Sindoor, which it was not. But Rahul Singh clarified by saying what he meant. He said that in Sindoor, Pakistan was the front face. China provided support in terms of military hardware, since 81% of Chinese or Pakistan equipment is of Chinese origin. Once again, this is insignificant because when you look at the inventory of the Indian military, it gets military support from multiple countries like France, Russia, US, Israel. Rahul Singh further said that in Operation Sindoor, the PLA provided Pakistan with its non-kinetic capabilities support. This is significant, but the most important and significant was underplayed by Rahul Singh, and that was that after 5th August 2019, when India removed 370 from Jammu and Kashmir, anybody who has followed what is going on between the PLA and the Pakistan military would know that as far as the two air forces were concerned, the Pakistan Air Force and the PLA Air Force, they started doing advanced realistic combat training. Now this is a big thing, and this is something the Pakistan Air Force could have only done with a trusted partner, which is PLAF. Because what happened here was that a new war concept through the exercises was validated. What the Pakistan Air Force told the world was called multi-domain operation, where it was not about a few aircraft, what used to happen earlier. It was about so many more aircraft, all data linked with a digital ecosystem supporting it. When you look at the whole thing, you realize that it called for extensive training of the Pakistan Air Force that they had been doing for the last 6 years, and the result of that we saw on the night of 6-7th May when the air battle was joined. And I have said in my earlier videos also that of the 4 days, this was the most decisive thing that the world watched. I won't go in the details here. And this is the thing that Rahul Singh completely ignored in his lessons learned of Operation Sindoor. So the point to make is this, that there were 4 things which were helping the Pakistan Air Force. And they were its hardware, its software, the non-kinetic capability support of the PLA, and most important, the level of training accomplished by the pilots of the Pakistan Air Force. And this is something that has to be put in the war appreciation of the Indian military for the next war that will happen, and that the war will be what I call a one front reinforced war. And this is what this means. What one front reinforced war means, I have just explained. So training was very significant, and it was because of the air battle and what the Pakistan Air Force could accomplish, that the geopolitical profile of Pakistan shot up. And recently we had the Air Chief of Pakistan Air Force, Air Chief Marshal Zahir Sidhu, in America, where he would have met with his US military counterparts, And certainly, amongst other things, what they would have wanted to know from Sidhu is his assessment of Operation Sindoor, and that they would have used in their own assessment about Indian military capabilities to be a military bulwark against China. So all the dots connect. So let's not underplay the capability in terms of extensive training of the Pakistan Air Force is my point. Second, Rahul Singh said that in Operation Sindoor, the Indian military was on top of the war escalation ladder. He explained this by saying that we started low. The Indian military very carefully chose 21 non-military targets, then they were later pruned down to 9 targets, non-military. And we also know, and he said that we passed this information to the Pakistan side that once we have done this, we do not want any escalation. Now, whether this information was passed before doing the strikes in Pakistan or after, there's a lot of confusion here. But the issue is the information was given by India that we don't want to escalate things. And this is what he calls being on top of the escalation ladder, that we controlled it. And according to him, the political and military objectives of Operation Sindoor were accomplished. Now let's understand this. Indian Air Force strikes non-military targets, not military targets, non-military targets inside Pakistan, breaches its airspace, then tells Pakistan, don't escalate things. What do you expect to happen? I mean, if you breach their sovereignty, they will retaliate. And they retaliated, hitting the military targets, what was the air battle of 6th, 7th night. And what all happened there, nobody in India wants to talk, because what hits we took, how many aircrafts were lost of the Indian Air Force, nobody wants to talk about that. Next, could we have achieved any political objective? And the only sensible political objective of Operation Sindoor should have been to deter Pakistan from its proxy war. You see, why do you go to war? We say war is a continuation of politics by another means, by other means. So this was the political objective. And rest be assured, this was not accomplished. Pakistan is not deterred. As far as the military objective is concerned, in any case, the Indian Air Force did not hit military targets. Instead, the Indian Air Force ended up exposing its limitations to Pakistan and China also, because the two would have confabulated after Operation Sindoor. Now, what politico-military objective was accomplished, I cannot understand. Now, as far as the war escalation ladder is concerned, when we see the reality, it appears that the Indian military was just standing on the side of the ladder. It is the Pakistan side which got on the war ladder because they hit the military targets in India. And as far as the escalation of that was concerned, neither side wanted it, and this was the sum and total of Operation Sindoor in reality. Next point Rahul Singh makes is that a significant issue or thing that happened in Operation Sindoor was that the Indian political leadership sent a very important message, a strategic message, that we have red lines. If you cross the red lines, there will be punitive action. Now, I can give so many examples, everybody knows. When Indian side has taken the kinetic action, done the kinetic action, and immediately told Pakistan and China also that we don't want war. What does it mean? Where are your red lines? Give you the examples. Take the case of 2016 so-called surgical strike, where the then DGMO Lieutenant General Ranbir Singh, he first informed Pakistan that our mission is over before telling India that we've done surgical strikes. Telling Pakistan we don't want war, then why did you do the kinetic action? Take next, Balakot. Indian Air Force did Operation Bandar. Next day they retaliated, the Pakistan Air Force. Indian Air Force accepted that what they did the next day was an act of war, but we did nothing. Take the case against China, 27 Doklam. We initiated Doklam. Our troops went down to the Doklam plateau. But we wanted to diffuse the situation, not the Chinese. And the evidence is that all the 13 rounds of talk for diffusing the situation were done in Beijing with none in India. So I can't understand what he meant by red lines and punitive action. It is not clear at all. Now, next what Rahul Singh said is that there is a need to focus on the C4ISR domain. And as an example, he said that when the ceasefire talks were going on between the two sides, that is the time the Chinese were giving real-time information, intelligence about Indian deployments to the Pakistan side. Now you see this, there are 2-3 issues involved here that need to be spelled out. The first is Rahul Singh says that C4ISR domain. Well, this is not a domain. This is outcome of 3 domains which work as a continuum. And those 3 domains are virtual domains. They are the domain of cyber, electromagnetic spectrum and space. The outcome of that is C4ISR. And I have repeatedly said in my videos, I have written in my book also, that if you do not have competitive capabilities in this continuum, you cannot win the war, period. Next, he spoke about real-time intelligence being given by China to Pakistan. Now, you see, there's another issue involved here. And that issue is, we saw in Sindoor, both sides firing missiles, long-range missiles. What that means is, this is the time for the Indian Army to rethink its whole war fighting doctrine. Because what will happen is, because of these missiles, the front of the battlefield, the rear of the battlefield, the left or the right of the battlefield, everything has become insignificant. Because now the missiles can go anywhere, target anything. What that means is that in our present thinking, or the way we have structured the Indian Army is that there is a contact line, there is a division commander there, he fights the war. When his defenses are breached, then the next commander, corps commander takes the battle over. Then when his are breached, then the army commander comes in the picture, it's all over. Because if now the missiles can hit anywhere in the battlefield or the battle space, why are we having all these? The div commander and the corps commander and the army commander, we have to think afresh. Not only that, because of the transparency, if the Chinese can see the entire deployment of the Indian military, what that means is it will be impossible to hide the command and control structures of the Indian Army as well as the Indian Air Force. Now, Indian Army, as far as it's concerned, it has added more and more headquarters, big headquarters. So this needs to be thought. A new restructuring is required. How do we hide these headquarters? Do we downsize them? Do we have only advanced headquarters? So what I am saying is this has become critical thing now instead of the structural reforms which are being done by CDS Anil Chauhan about the theatre commands. They can wait, this can't. So that's the point. Next, this may sound controversial, but it is important, the next point. Now, Rahul Singh said what other commanders have said as a routine, that the nature of war has not changed, the character of war has changed. Well, I would advise that please pause and think. Nature of war is what war is. Character of war is how war will be fought. Now, when we talk of nature of war, we are talking what war is. So, war is about violence, war is about bloodshed, war is about use of force. Think of a situation, if all this was not happening, there was no violence, there was no bloodshed, there was no use of force, then won't you agree that the nature of war has changed then? Of course. And when we look at the huge gap, the technical gap, the gap of war concepts between the PLA and the Indian military, you realize that God forbid if there is a war between China and India, the nature of war will change. Why? Because please remember that the last structural reform, significant reform done by the PLA was in April 2024, where what used to be the strategic support force was broken down into arms. And here I will refer to two arms, which is Aerospace Force, which is about space capabilities of China, and Cyberspace Force, which is about cyber capabilities of China. Both these arms reporting directly to the Central Military Commission. The point to make is this structural reform was done because today China has the capability to change the nature of war in the whole of nation. What I call the war zone, which is distinct from the battlefield where violence happens, which is the combat zone. And we have seen that, especially, please recall what happened in the 2020 Mumbai cyber attacks. For 48 hours, Mumbai was practically came to a standstill because of the cyber attacks. And the Chinese have done plenty of such cyber attacks. So through those cyber attacks, they have collected huge data by the battle damage assessments of those attacks. And as a consequence of that, today they have, make no mistakes, software, counter force and counter value weapons to be used against India to bring the entire whole of nation, the war zone of India, to a complete standstill where your financial institutions won't work, your ATMs won't work, your railways won't work, your power supply won't work, your ATCs won't work. Just think of that situation. It is all very real. So China has this capability. So do not keep repeating this mantra that the nature of war has not changed. It has changed between India and China. So this also needs to be kept in mind, and this is more deadly. Why it is deadly is because if the things in the whole of nation come to a standstill, there will be a direct pressure, a big pressure on the political leadership, which is what the Chinese called a cognitive confrontation leading to a cognitive defeat without a bullet being fired. Please think about it. Next, which was very queer, I thought, Rahul Singh said, referring to China, that the Chinese don't want to get into a mudslinging match on the northern border. He was referring to the things that have happened on the line of actual control between India and China. He was referring to the Galwan killings. He was referring to the jostling that goes on the line of actual control. The point is, this is what the Chinese called grey zone operations. This is not the hot war. Please understand that, God forbid, if there is a war between the PLA and the Indian military, it will be at an entirely different level. And just to give you a glimpse or an idea of what it will be is that today the PLA is capable of fighting in 5 battle spaces. And the most important of them is the virtual battle space, what I have repeatedly said, which is cyberspace and electromagnetic spectrum. Then there is physical battle space where we have land, we have air and sea and space. And in air, again, they have those hypersonic capabilities to fight near space. And in sea, they have capabilities to fight undersea, 300 meters and below. So this is about the physical battle space. Then there is information battle space, which honestly doesn't touch the Indian military because it is not networked. So this is basically meant for PLA fighting with a peer competitor where the data has to be protected. This is the most important thing because that is information. So this information battle space is what is called, happens in the wired and the wireless networks. And for this, as part of the reforms that I was referring to of April 2024, they created another arm which is called the Information Support Force. I won't go in the details on that. I advise Rahul Singh and other leaders to read all this. And the next is the cognitive battle space, the fourth one, which is what I said, the nature of war changes in the war zone, the whole of nation. And then the fifth one, of course, is the information war. Now the good news is PLA has no intentions of going to war with India because it will not want to jeopardize its mantra of peaceful rise, and it does not see India as a competitor, military competitor at all, provided India stops irritating China, fingering China on the Dalai Lama question, a subject that I will take on in another video of mine. So the point here is, it is not about a mudslinging match. It is something much more than that. That will happen if there is a war. Now, the last, perhaps the point that I want to talk about is, Rahul Singh said that Operation Sindoor was a tri-service action. All the three services were involved because the message that we wanted to give to the adversary is that we were fighting as an integrated force. First of all, you don't have to give the message there. They'll get to know when you fight as an integrated force. Now, let me just jump ahead and say that after Sindoor, and this was on the 25th of June, news came that the Ministry of Defence has authorized the Chief of Defence Staff to issue joint instructions and joint orders to the three defence services. So this is the lesson that was learned from Operation Sindoor, that the CDS was authorized to give joint orders to the three services. And if this is what it is, then I think it is something that is very dangerous, because we heard Indian Navy attaché, defense naval attaché in Indonesia, Captain Shiv Kumar, recently say that the IF was given instructions not to hit at the enemy's air defenses, not to hit at the military infrastructure. In other words, not to do the SEED operation, which is suppression of enemy air defense. Anybody who joins the Air Force, forget about the Air Chief, he is very knowledgeable. Anybody who joins the force knows that the first thing that the Air Force does is SEED operations. Now, if this is what the orders went from CDS, he is to give the combined orders, then I think that was a total disaster. And then we heard from the CDS that for 2 days, which is 8th and 9th, we don't know if the entire Air Force was grounded or partially flying. He said from the 10th, then we came out in full force. Now, if in 4 days, 2 days, your Air Force is not in full force, then there is a problem. So the point I want to make here is that if you want to give combined orders to have an officer, a CDS, who gives joint orders, then instead of having one from the army, Anil Chauhan, it is better to have somebody from the Air Force, CDS. And the reason why I say that is because the Air Force understands technology far better than the army officers. Now, when you understand technology, you understand how to use technology, you will certainly be more competent. And if you are more competent, you will be able to stand up to the political leadership or the higher authority to say what needs to be done. So the point I'm making is that I heard like anybody else, Rahul Singh, but I have just picked on a few things only because I didn't want the length of the video to go very long. But there is a lot that we need to think about. We have to look at the next war, which will be what I have always called a one-front reinforced war. This is the war we have to prepare for. Thank you so much.